Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Jody Mann, and I show men and women how they can lead healthy, happy, sustainable lives. And I'm really delighted because my guest today, I can hardly speak today, is Jody Miller-Young. Hi, Jody.
Hi, Julie. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to see you.
It's good to
So,
see
for
you.
the use of those of you that don't yet know Jody, she is a pet healer and coach. But before we get into talking about that, Jody, I'd really like to take you back, or for you to take us back, to you growing up as a young girl. What was life like?
Wow, it's been a really circuitous route, as it is probably for many people. I grew up in New York and on a place called Long Island, and it was a suburban childhood. I always loved animals from as early as I can remember, and begged my dad to buy me a horse for 7 years. And then on Valentine's Day, when I was 14, he surprised me with a horse that I named Black Magic. He was originally called Celebrate, and he was a beautiful black and white horse. And I went on for the next few years to go to horse shows and go in jumping events and go to horse camp. I was really passionate about it. And so my childhood was a really good childhood. I was very blessed, and, grateful for that.
Brilliant. What an amazing 14th birthday. Wow.
It was incredible. Valentine's Day. It was amazing.
Wow.
Big red bow on the horse's halter.
Wow.
Yeah, it was phenomenal.
What kind of lessons do you think you learned from your parents? Maybe some of the good ones and perhaps some of the ones that weren't quite so useful.
My parents were generally kind people, and my dad was very, very fair. And I think that was a huge thing that I got from him, to really try and look at situations and be really fair in the way that I thought about them and approached them. My mom was, big personality, took up all the space in the room. So that was tough, for so sorry, Julie.
No, it's
real life. It's real life. Work day.
Yeah.
So that was tough, for a little girl. But my mom taught me about fashion, and that's another passion of mine. And actually, it inspired one of the businesses that I started along the way in my life.
Brilliant. Well, we'll get into talking about that a little bit more in a minute. But I'm just wondering, I mean, we all grew up with things that served us and some things that maybe didn't, maybe some limiting beliefs that we inherited.
Yeah.
What really that came up for you?
Yeah, absolutely. The not good enough syndrome. Absolutely the not good enough syndrome. I've been battling that my whole life. And now that I'm older, is it true they say older and wiser? I guess maybe sometimes, but I do feel like I have more of a handle on it. So that was something that I kind of took away from childhood that did not work for me. And also I grew up at a time when parents focused on the boys in terms of their career. I wanted to be a vet, and my parents never focused on that for me. They always thought she'll get married, she'll have a family, and someone will take care of her. And so I never went to vet school. And I just got sidetracked, I guess, by boys when I was a teenager, and then just really never ended up going to vet school. So that kind of was something that was a disappointment at various times in my life. But for the most part, I think I had a good childhood.
Has that been a regret, not becoming a vet?
Yes and no. Vets have such a hard time with what they see. And I don't know that I could have handled that because I'm extremely sensitive. Send me a post on a sad post about a dog or a cat or a person, and I'm crying, so I think it might've been very stressful for me. I feel like what I'm doing now is what I'm meant to be doing.
Brilliant. I know that you've done many, many different things. You touched upon your passion for fashion. So tell
Yes.
us about your story, you know, what happened when you left school and how you got to be doing what you're doing now.
Great. So when I left school, I actually went to school in Miami, in University of Miami, and not far from where I'm living now. And I got a job when I was at school to make some extra money in the music industry. And back then, disco was really big. And I went to work at a label called TK Records, which was run by a guy named Henry Stone. And it was one of the biggest labels in the disco era. And Henry went on to be an icon, and there are books written about him. I worked in a little side business of TK that was the booking agency. And that introduction to the music industry when I graduated and came back up to New York sort of set me on a path to continue to work in the industry. And I ended up getting a job as a publicist, a training position as a publicist with a gentleman named Howard Bloom, who also went on to be an icon in the music industry and publicity. Brilliant, quirky, lunatic of a man. If you Google Howard Bloom, you'll see the guy's written many, many books. He's like interviewed and been, quoted by thought leaders. He's brilliant, but he's wacky. But while at Howard's, and I was there for about 4 years, I worked with everyone from John Mellencamp at the beginning of his career to Prince, who in Howard's office did his very last interview with Barbara Graustark of Newsweek. And he was so upset, he got up and left and never spoke to the press again. To, gosh, so many people. Howard REO, Speedwagon, Styx, these big bands of the era. And then I went on to start my own company in PR called JLM Public Relations, Inc., and worked with Duran Duran and the Power Station offshoot of Duran Duran. And Arcadia, the other offshoot, went to Live Aid with all those bands when I was 3 months pregnant with my daughter, Morgan. And that was an amazing experience. Worked on the Wall concert with Roger Waters of Pink Floyd about 6 months after the wall came down in Berlin, and went to Berlin for it. We did the concert to 350,000 people on the Potsdamer Platz, the no man's land between East and West. And when we went there months before, they were actually excavating parts of it, the Nazi bunkers, and found artwork and all sorts of other artifacts from that period that hadn't been touched since the 40s. I went on to work with The Cure and Iggy Pop and John Mellencamp and many others. And it was an incredible career that lasted about 30 years and helped, raise my daughter and put a roof over our heads and food on the table and give us a good life. And then when I got to retire from that, I decided to pursue my love for fashion. So I went to Parsons School of Design, one of the two big fashion schools in New York City, that and FIT. And I took courses, and I didn't know how to sew. So I had to learn how to sew. I went to a sewing class in my neighborhood. We were living in Chelsea and in New York City. And we had just gotten a puppy because after retiring, I had time. So we'd gotten Sophie, our little Portuguese Podengo puppy. And I made a practice coat for Sophie. And walking around New York City, people kept stopping me. Where did you get that coat? Where did you get that coat? And I said, I made it. And I made another one. And people kept stopping. So I ended up pivoting from my thought of starting a bespoke label for women to starting a sort of luxury dog coat and accessories company, and called it after my muse, Couture by Sophie. And for the next couple of years, that's what we did. I made custom dog coats for clients. I created a small collection called the Icons, which was informed by my years in the music industry. So different styles were an homage to fashion icons in music. So there was the Cindy for Cyndi Lauper, and it had a bright red and purple faux fur, and it was all vegan, faux fur collar and ultra suede purple lining. And then there was the Cher, and there was the Brittany and the Jennifer. And there, it was just a lot of fun. And I ended up making the coats for the runway of the American Humane Association's Hero Dog Awards several years ago. So I ended up designing a dress and a matching coat for Sophie, and we walked the red carpet. And for the first time, I think, in my career as a publicist, I was the one being interviewed, not ushering people down the red carpet like I had done for so many years. And it was loads of fun. And so I took that as far as I could go. I really didn't know what I was doing. So I made a lot of mistakes, and it ended up to be kind of stressful. So it kind of segued into my comfort zone, which is writing, interviewing, promoting, and that became Bark and Swagger, which was my blog, my podcast, which I still have. And I also became the fashion editor for a magazine called Hampton's Pet, which I was at from the beginning until they ended the magazine a few years later. And that was a lot of fun too. I got to interview so many amazing people, met so many amazing people. You probably hear Sophie barking in the background. You hear her?
It's appropriate.
It is. I mean, we get away with that stuff in my business, but Sophie loves to hear herself talk. And Bark and Swagger has been a wonderful journey. I love being in the pet space. I love being a journalist in the pet space. And I would go every year to Global Pet Expo, which is one of the biggest shows in the world for people in the pet space, and just find the coolest new brands and interview people and turn my listeners on to stuff that I love. And that was fantastic. And then somewhere along that line, and I have to sort of rewind many years back to when my daughter Morgan was 4. She's now 35. We went on vacation, Morgan, myself, and my mom, the 3 generations of girls. And we went to Florida. And when we got there, the very first day that we were there, Morgan came down with an ear infection. I had already been following homeopathy. I had a homeopathic physician in London, actually. And I had been practicing here and there. And Morgan's ear infection was bad. And so I consulted a doctor. We got the antibiotic. I put it in the refrigerator just to be safe. But then I did some research and I gave her a homeopathic remedy. And we sat up with her all night. And after a couple of doses of that remedy, by the morning, her fever broke. And by the afternoon, she was a crazy 4-year-old running around and wanting to play. And that was an incredible testament to me using homeopathy to heal. I had had small wins before that, but that really was a corner turner for me. So I started using it more and more, not only for my family and some friends, but also for my dog. I only had 1 dog at that time, and continue to have success. And over the years, sort of fell on and off of the wagon of homeopathy. Then fast forward to about 1.5 years ago, and I came down with some stomach issue, literally during the time I was losing one of my beloved dogs, a dog that I had rescued and became my heart dog, little Albie. And I think that emotionally, that set me off. And no matter what I tried and all of the, medical tests that I took, which all were normal, thank goodness, this just persisted. And then I remembered, homeopathy. Let me try homeopathy. And I actually, for this, consulted with a homeopathic physician. And together we worked at it. And the first remedy that she prescribed to me, which I had actually come up with and she agreed with, was incredible. It stopped my worst symptoms. And over time, it all went away. And again, a major corner turner. So I picked up again with my dogs, and I realized, Jody, you've always loved natural medicine. You've always been an animal nut. Why don't you put them together and help teach pet parents what you know and help them have the kind of successes that I've had? And that's what I did. And that became the Hound Healer.
I love your story, Jody.
Thank you.
Goodness. So many icons you met and all the things that led to the next thing that you did. It seems it happened really organically. I love that. So of all the things that you've done, is there one highlight in your whole life that really, really stands out? And what would that be and why?
Oh God, it's really hard to choose one highlight. It could be the Wall concert in Berlin. That was an iconic show with a celebrity all-star band. It could be deciding to become a healer, and finally finding what I think my life's purpose is. It's hard to pick one.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It could be going to Tokyo in a dress that I designed for the launch of a Coco Chanel book by a famous photographer who, when he was 25 years old, spent weeks with her, and she fell in love with him and allowed him incredible access. And I designed a mashup of a kimono and a cocktail dress to go to that event, and then had dinner with the photographer and all of the sort of inner workings, the head of Chanel in Japan. And that was a huge experience. So I've been really blessed. I've gotten to do a lot of things.
Yeah. Clearly a ridiculous question, because there's a list of things to come, really.
It really could be.
No one goes through life, even with the opportunities that you had, and doesn't experience some downs, do they? There are ups and downs.
Of course not.
That's a factor of being alive, isn't it? So
yes.
What would you say in your whole life has been your biggest challenge, the biggest thing that you've had to face, and how did you deal with whatever that was?
Okay. There were a couple of them. The first was when my mom got dementia, and I watched her decline, and really took the lead between my brother and I in caring for her. A relationship that my whole life growing up was tenuous, and this kind of brought it 180 degrees, because the roles were reversed, and I found that I was very protective of her. And it allowed me to complete all of the, sort of hurt with my mom. So that was big. It could be losing Albie. I mean, I've lost a few dogs in my life, but Albie was a puppy mill survivor. He spent the first 7 years of his life in a cage in a puppy mill, being force bred and abused. And I made a vow I wanted to have him at least another 7 years living the good life. I got 4.5. And that broke my heart because he became my heart dog. He trusted me and only me. He loved my husband, but he wouldn't even let my husband pick him up or put on his harness. I was the only one who could handle him. And he adored me and I adored him. So that was really, really hard. How did I handle these things? I meditate. I started meditating in the 80s. I learned TM. It got me through my divorce, my first marriage. And it's gotten me through some very, very tough times in my life. I recommend it highly. And it's all about practice with meditation because I'm a type A New Yorker. And you better believe that for a while in the beginning, getting my mind to quiet was major, major task. But if you stick with it, the rewards are huge. So that's
Absolutely.
probably one of the biggest things that got me through.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on the meditation, and
You
it
too.
takes me everything to kind of just stop and yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
homeopathy. So I absolutely love homeopathy. I've experienced
Yay.
it a lot, and I know it works. But there'll be some people watching, Jody, that don't really know what it is. They might have some sense of what it is, but can you tell us what it is and why it works?
Sure. Homeopathy, the basics of it is what's called like cures like. It's the law of similars. And what that means is when you have symptoms in conventional or Western medicine, they treat symptoms and they may be able to make your symptoms go away, usually by suppressing them. But it's not handling the internal imbalance that created the symptoms in the first place. Homeopathy looks to do just that by matching the symptoms that you have, as well as the person you are, your personality, your quirks, your loves, your hates, what makes you Julie, with a remedy, a homeopathic remedy that would create those same symptoms in a healthy person. And when you get the match correctly, it triggers the body to heal itself, and those symptoms one by one fall away and disappear. And it's almost like magic. It's energy medicine. So it's literally the energy of the remedy that's been made homeopathic resonating, if you get it right, with the energy of your body's symptoms and your body, because we are all energy. Everything is energy. And so it's a really ingenious thing. It's science because Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, the doctor and scientist who created homeopathy, did thousands of provings on healthy people and recorded meticulously all the data. So there's a lot of scientific data about homeopathy, and it's been in practice for almost 300 years. And it's been curing everything from first aid issues to cancer, dare I say, but it's done it. So it's wonderful, and it's a do no harm modality.
I love that. I think that's the best definition I have ever heard. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I am an absolute advocate, Jody.
I'm so glad. Spread the word.
Obviously, you are a wellness coach with dogs. So if there are dog owners watching, what tips would you give them for keeping their dog well?
Great. It all starts with good nutrition. And good nutrition means vibrant food that's alive with enzymes. The only pet food, and this is for dogs and cats, that still has the enzymes in that food alive is raw food. And raw food, if your vet tells you that it's dangerous to serve your pet raw, what they're not telling you, because in most of their offices, they have shelves of, prescription diet foods, and they're in business with pet food manufacturers. What they're not telling you is that when your dog is digesting food, the stomach acid is 100 times greater in a dog's stomach than in a human's. So it kills everything, pathogens, parasites, it kills it all. And their digestive tract is much shorter than ours. So the transit time is much quicker. So feeding your pet raw, I would say you be careful. Wear surgical gloves or wash with soap and water because you have more of a chance of catching something than your pet does. But your pet will benefit tremendously from a good, high quality raw diet. So that's the first thing. The second is avoid pharmaceuticals like the plague whenever you can, because 9.75 out of 10 times, there's going to be a natural, holistic way to heal, to truly heal whatever is ailing your pet. And if you follow those two bits of advice, you will create a stronger immune system in your pet, so it will be ready to fight things off, and you will create a stronger life force in your pet. So they'll be more vibrant and they'll live a longer life.
And who doesn't want that if you're a pet owner?
And who doesn't want that?
I would absolutely recommend that you look at the links below this video and check out what Jody's got to say. She's a mine of information.
Thank you.
Why would you say, Jody, that you are the go-to person to talk to for pet wellness?
There aren't a lot of people who do homeopathy for animals and teach pet parents how to do it. And I mean, I can only go by what my students have said about what I'm teaching. My style of teaching is very intimate in that I really connect with my students, and I'm well versed in a lot of different areas about complementary pet health. And I've had experience with all of the dogs that I have. We now have 3 dogs and a cat. So I have practical experience in what works. I'm certified as a pet homeopathic educator, and I just know that my students have gone on to tremendous successes in their own pets, and that is the proof in the pudding, as they say.
Wonderful. Obviously, you mentioned you've got 3 dogs now, so that takes time, spending time with them, walking them. What else do you do when you're not working?
When is that?
I know you just love it, don't you?
There's always so much to do working today, as you know. I tend to want to spend time with my husband and my animals. So we try and get them out places. We, take them for walks by the canal. I see friends. We've all been locked up for so long. So, and, I live in Florida, which has its trials and tribulations over here, but I try and go outdoors, and see friends and be social. I feel it's really, really important to connect with people. So between that and my animals, it's a full life.
Yeah, absolutely. One final question.
Yeah.
When you're no longer on this planet, Jody, how would you like to be remembered?
As someone who cared and helped people.
Fabulous. That says it all.
Thank
Jody
you.
Miller-Young, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julie. It's been a pleasure.